Hey ArcheryTalk, this is Lucas, and today I'm here to do a test of the Annihilator Broadhead. This is actually going to be my first real broadhead review I've ever done. I saw the Annihilator at the ATA show this past January, and the video I put together ended up doing very well on the YouTube and the Facebook channels, one of the most popular from the show, so I figured it made sense to be kind of my maiden voyage for broadhead reviews. Before we dig in any further, we should probably look at some of the specs and features of the Annihilator Broadhead. This is a single-piece, three-blade head made of 4140 alloy steel. This head has a cutting diameter of 0.91 inches, and the manufacturer boasts it has the largest cutting surface area in the industry at 0.18 square inches. Unique to Annihilator is what they're calling a back scoop wedge design, and that's really what the meat of this story is, so to speak. And on the Annihilator website, you're going to see a whole bunch of marketing speak about this technology and what it does, and hopefully today we're going to see if we can verify some of those results. Annihilator also says it has the tightest tolerances in the industry with 100% symmetry. I have no way of testing that, but I figured it was worth pointing out just so we can kind of get all the facts of the broadhead out in front of you. Annihilator also says that back scoop wedge helps conceal the arrow shaft. In other words, it kind of acts like a maul does when chopping wood compared to an axe. So when it's going through the deer, it's kind of supposed to open the way so the arrow shaft is not so much touching the inside of the deer as the broadhead is kind of pushing all that meat and tissue and fur out of the other side. We've got some tests planned today to see what kind of truth there is to those claims, and hopefully we're going to find out in just a little bit. We've also got some serious torture testing planned for this thing. We're going to shoot through some plywood, we're going to shoot into some concrete, and we're going to have a little bit of fun. I won't shoot a broadhead for hunting if I can't be accurate with it. And so I had these grand plans to do this accuracy test using my Bowtech Revolt and its kind of unique tuning technology. I had all these plans and how I was going to show you how everything worked. And then when I went out to my range with the broadheads for the first time, I didn't need to do any of it. So as luck would have it, this was shooting right with field points right away. The only thing literally that I had to do was knock tune. And if you don't know what that is, basically you shoot your arrow and then I move it a quarter turn each time until I'm getting until it's hitting in the area I want to, basically where my field points are hitting. And that's literally all I had to do. I didn't move my arrow rest, I didn't move my D-loop, and I didn't make any of the actual changes to the bow whatsoever. And so basically how I set this up to fly with field points, it was flying great with broadheads right away. So that's, I don't know if that's, that all those marks go to the broadhead for that. Probably some of that goes to how well I had the bow tuned before we got started, but it really couldn't have been any easier. I shot this thing out as far as 60 yards, which is farther than I'm going to be hunting any deer I ever shoot. But I do like to kind of practice at longer ranges sometimes. And I wasn't noticing any arrow drop at that distance. It was hitting basically with my field points at 60 yards, or at least as close as my skills could make it do that. Really happy with how that's working. And Annihilator also mentions that their design leads to quiet arrow flight. And I can confirm that's pretty true. I've shot some fixed blade heads that make quite a bit of noise when you're shooting them, and this is not one of those. I don't think it's any better than the other quiet fixed blade heads, but it's right in line with those guys. It's a nice quiet head, which I don't know if you'd expect that or not with that kind of those big scoopy wedges on the back, but it flies straight as far as at least my testing goes, and it flies quiet. One of the things Annihilator says about this broadhead is that it's supposed to leave a better blood trail on both sides of the animal, so the side where it's kind of going in and the side where it's coming out. I have no deer here to test that theory on. I really wish I did. So I decided to have a little fun, and I've set up a couple of plastic bags with different colored food coloring. I've got some kind of red food coloring for the Annihilator, and I've got some green food coloring for another broadhead, a Q80 Exodus, a broadhead which I've had great success with in the past. I just wanted to see how those two looked shooting that kind of bag together and seeing how the water sprays on both sides. I don't know if it's going to really prove anything, but I thought it'd be a little fun, and it might look cool on camera in slow motion. First up is the Annihilator, and what stood out to me was how much splash I saw on the entry side of the bag. It's an impressive explosion of red, especially when you really slow it down frame by frame. The Q80 Exodus is up next, and while it sends a great splash of green on the exit side, it doesn't have the same level of splash heading back towards the shooter. So what does this all ultimately mean when you hit a deer? I really don't know, but I thought this looked way too cool not to show you. I love slow motion. On a slightly more scientific note, I wanted to see what those holes looked like the manufacturer was talking about, so I decided to sandwich this chunk of pork roast in between two pieces of plywood. Let's see what happens. Already you can see there's a fairly substantial hole in the front of that plywood, much bigger than most broadheads. You're just going to see like an arrow shaped hole with 3 little blades. This is kind of it's blasted a hole through it. I'm gonna pull this off in a couple of parts here. There's you can see some plywood in the actual pork roast here, but I'm gonna take everything apart and just to see what it looks like when I take it out. So I'm gonna just unscrew the broadhead real quick. So just so I can get the arrow out. And let's have a look and see what it's done to the pork roast. So, yeah, there's a pretty good sized hole in the pork roast right there. I don't know how well that shows up on camera. There's a bunch of wood on my side. I'll spread it, I'll put it over here too. Oh yeah, the exit wound is actually bigger than the entrance. But that's a pretty good hole. I'd be pretty happy if I did that on a deer. And the other piece of the plywood is similar. You can kind of look at it this side and you kind of see besides the pork juice on the side. But that's yeah, it's again, it doesn't. Most broadheads just kind of leave an arrow-shaped hole with 3 blades. And just because I've never done it before, I wanted to try my hand at making ballistic gel, and I'm just going to see how the Annihilator Broadhead reacts when it hits it. So I really had no idea what to expect. I've never used ballistic gel before. This was really just a treat for me because I wanted to try and shoot it. I ended up hitting a little bit low, so I wanted to save room for an extra shot. I'm going to pop the arrow out here. Let me just take my broadhead off again. And I'll just have a look and see what we've done to the little wound channel we've created in there. Again, I have no idea what it's supposed to look like, but it's you can kind of open it up and see the cuts it's leaving. It's pretty cool, I got to tell you. Now that the penetration testing is done, it's time to put these Annihilator broadheads to the torture test. And I'm going to start off by shooting this piece of plywood 10 times with the same broadhead, and we're going to see how it holds up. So I just shot 7/16 inch, so almost half-inch plywood 10 times, and I will say that the broadhead looks like there's not a nick to be found on it at all right now. It's actually still in remarkable shape. But I might have something else in store. Shooting through plywood is all well and good, but what happens if you pass through your deer and you crack off of a rock on the other side, or you just misfire your bow and land it somewhere you shouldn't? I've got myself a nice big chunk of concrete block, and I'm going to shoot the Annihilator into there. I'm going to sacrifice one of my old hunting arrows, not this airstrike, which I'm going to plan on taking into the woods with me this year. So I've got these gold tip Kinetic Chaos arrows. And I'm going to sacrifice one of those and drill the Annihilator into that concrete block. Left a pretty sizable dent in the cinder block concrete thing here. You can kind of see the depth in there, but clearly not enough to stick in. My arrow is toast. It is the outsert has smashed. The carbon is broken on the inside. I'm not going to unscrew that because I don't want to get slivers in my finger. But the broadhead itself, it's got a bunch of concrete dust on it, but I'll be damned if this thing doesn't look like it's still okay. Like it really looks like I could shoot it again. That is remarkable, to be fair. I'm very impressed by how durable this is proving to be. I think now I'm going to take this to my sharpening stone, and we're going to see if I can get it back into game shape and kind of cutting sharp again. So I've cleaned it up a little bit with some water to get some of the concrete dust out of there. I can't get it all, and I'm sure we've dulled it a little bit between the plywood and the concrete. So now I'm going to run it on my 220 grit whetstone, and we'll see if we can't bring an edge back to this thing. So I've done a few passes on the whetstone to see if I could bring some life back to the cutting edges, so I'm just going to do a little rubber band test and see if it cuts through here without any trouble. And there you have it. I don't know if I'll hunt with this particular head that went through the concrete, but I think I have every intention of bringing one of the other Annihilator broadheads I've got in the package out in the woods with me this year. And I'll probably bring this one as a backup. I still think it'll go through a deer without any trouble. And I can't say how impressed I am with the durability of this thing. Again, I don't know if the pork shoulder test or the ballistic gel test are really telling a whole story here, but the bottom line is I'm just happy with how durable this thing has proven to be. I like the holes it's leaving behind, And the big test will be this fall when I take it in the woods with me, and hopefully if I have some success, I'll share it with you guys on Facebook and YouTube and all that. So Archery Talk, thank you so much for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel an awful lot, and we'll see you again soon.